Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May. We know her as our clinical, organizational, and forensically trained psychologist. She is the president and co-founder of A.M. May and Associates Incorporated, the president and founder of Celeste Productions Incorporated, and if that wasn't enough, she's also an author, editor, musician, and she is the 2023 President's Distinction Award winner for the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation. She is the first Black chair elect of the Michigan Health Council Trustee Board in its 82-year history, blazing trails. And she formerly created and was a columnist with Michigan Writers Forum, and it was entitled Phenomenal Michigan Women. The name is STARS, Scholars Teaming to Alleviate Racism in Society. And this evening, Dr. Angela Celeste May is going to talk to us about how we are seeing society amplify its voices to impact change. Welcome to the show, Dr. Angie. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kim. It's always a pleasure to be here.
So let's get right into it. I don't know about you, but Los Angeles has just been whoo at the epicenter. And then what was it? The president wanted to have a military parade, which looked terrible. I was like, yeah, this isn't North Korea. But anyway, you had across the nation, cities were filled with protesters calling themselves No King's Day protests. Dr. Angie, I don't know about you, but can you break down what this means in terms of people amplifying their voices? What are we seeing from a psychological point of view?
You know what we are saying? What we are seeing, I'm going to coin this phrase. I don't think it's been used in my profession yet, but I'm going to call it the anti-Stockholm syndrome is what we're seeing. Anti-Stockholm syndrome. For your watchers and your listeners, many of you may have heard of the Stockholm syndrome, but basically what it is it's when someone who's been captured or kidnapped, held against their will, it's when their natural human and humane empathetic aspects of the brain and our emotions get stirred up such that even though they're a prisoner, they begin to develop sympathy and empathetic feelings towards their captor. um, and not just empathy and sympathy, but actually feel some kind of connection or an alignment with the person who has held them. Um, so this is I'm calling it the anti-Stockholm syndrome, because while the current occupant of the White House has not fully captured, and according to polls, a long way from fully capturing everyone in the country,
Yeah.
even though it's not to that degree, still in psychological terms, I would say that all of these amazing protests that have
Mm.
been consistent and growing and fearless, it's showing us that people recognize the power of using their own voices, that they are recognizing that they can't not only can push back, but that they have a duty to themselves and to each other and to our country to push back, um, in on all, maybe not all the ways, because we're trying to avoid illegality, of course, but in many of the ways that they can. So it's very powerful what we're seeing, and I think it speaks to resilience. It really speaks to the resilience where people will remain and continue to be creative in finding ways to use their voice to affect change. So it's very, very important.
That is absolutely true. So while you were speaking, Dr. Angie, I was thinking about it. Do you notice if there are more women than men? Is there any type of a breakdown that you have noticed? And if so, is there a psychological reason for that?
That's a very good question. Oh wow. It makes me want to go back and pull up some images and look and see. Right off the top of my head, I would say, and I could be wrong because I've got to go back and look again. Um, I'm not immediately thinking of breakdowns along our standard demographic lines in terms of, women versus men, or people of certain, backgrounds and ethnicities, etc. But actually the opposite is really what stands out to me. The fact that this situation is really forcing people to recognize that it takes all of us, and that we are a country because we're all in this together. So that actual togetherness across some of those not democratic, what I'm trying to say, demographic lines, yes. That's what I really stands out to me in this moment. um, People who may ordinarily not have come together, or ordinarily weren't talking to each other per se, in terms of their background or their affiliations, and that includes across political lines as well. We are seeing that. We are seeing, not only in the protests, but we're seeing um, Republican voters in very red states welcoming and cheering with open arms the Democratic leaders who are coming to speak to them,
Mm-hmm.
when their own Republican representatives are not. So that's really what stands out to me, is um, that using the voices in a collective manner, and psychologically and emotionally recognizing how much more power there is when we come together. And I love that. I really love that, because it really, I'm, it's amazing how organic this is.
Yes.
People are really reaching down, in terms of, again, that strength of the power of the voice. And as we've all heard some of the reporting from people who are out there on the ground, interviewing folks, there are many who have never picked up a picket sign before in their lives, never protested before. Um, so it's very ironic, and I think even poetic, to recognize that the occupant of the White House, who has been, I would say, credibly called divisive in his language and policies, has actually, what has actually resulted from that, tying that to resilience again, is people. Whereas, yes, we've been very divided, and, more than ever, perhaps, as people have said. But what's happening in these latter days, these more recent days, is when people push back and recognizing that what he's doing, what the administration is doing, is affecting all of us, no matter your political affiliation. It's actually having the opposite effect. The attempts at divisiveness, which were working for a long time. Not saying it's all over with, not saying we're all cured of that, but people are really dropping some of those divisions, because they're recognizing that this is affecting my life, my kids, my loved ones, my community, and me. So and generations that come after as well. So that's a very powerful statement and use of voices collectively.
And you're right, because I've seen some striking images.
Mhm.
And I don't remember where it is in California, but it was a community, and there were groups of women
Mhm.
who were pushing back against this military. You have these men
Yes.
in their gear, and they have guns, and they all have phones, and they were, you got to go. You got to go. You cannot be here. And I thought,
Mhm.
wow. And then we've seen people, telling people, no, you cannot come in. You
Mhm.
cannot harass this person. Or they're filming so that we do see what's actually happening. There was a great video I saw out of Compton where you had the brothers in the community who were standing. It reminded me of the Black Panthers. They
Mhm.
were they were like, mm-mm, you're not getting in. Mm-mm.
Mhm.
And I said, wow, people are pushing back. And it is interesting because I have noticed, I've seen a lot of women that have pushed back. But
Definitely.
I do think there is something very special and wonderful about the fact that people are coming together who ordinarily would not, as you said.
Mhm.
And it speaks to the understanding that this isn't just this person's issue or
Mhm.
this group over here's issue. This is something that impacts all of us, as you said. Can
Mhm.
we talk a little bit, what drives that? Because is this empathy, or is there something else? Because And the reason why I'm asking is this empathy because, in the news, I don't know if you've heard, Dr. Angie, to be empathetic is a bad thing now. A lot of people, there was a woman, she was Republican, who came out and said, I don't want my children, her kindergartner, she didn't want this child to be taught empathy. She says, because this will make him weak. And I thought, but
Oh
in
my
the
goodness.
Bible, Jesus says the greatest commandment
Hmm.
is love. And so
That's
I'm
right.
just trying to figure out, and because you are our brilliant uh, psychologist, Dr. Angie, help me out because I'm just a layperson. So I don't have my doctor degree as of yet. It is coming, but I
It
don't.
is coming. It is coming. Oh my goodness. Well, um, there's multiple angles at which we can come at this, multiple layers to this. Um, First of all, we know that um, there are mistaken notions out there, some ideas out there that fly in the face of actual facts and lived experience and things that we know from history. And so that's one of them. This idea that empathy would make a child weak. And what's interesting about that is that it came from a woman.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, historically, some of the what used to be called overly macho, what we call now toxic masculinity, same idea. Historically, that was something that we would expect to hear perhaps from a man who really bought into a more narrow view of what masculinity looks like, and it includes pretending that babies of both sexes were not born with tear ducts. They were born with them. That's for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, even though one might expect to hear that maybe from, more, and this is not to say all men feel that way, absolutely not. But we know that that's been, unfairly, and I say unfair because it's been detrimental to a lot of men and boys as well, but unfairly perpetuated more so among men and boys. But by no means is that mistaken, I'm going to say mistaken notion isolated to just men and boys, obviously. So I'll just come out and say she's mistaken. And whether it's scripturally, just exactly like you said, um or in lived experience, we know that empathy, love, and empathy is a part of that, is a great strength. We've had policy change on the strength of love. We've had lives saved on the strength of love. We've had like you just described, people in the community pushing back against people in their own community who are being treated wrongly and harassed and threatened. So we've had lives saved because of the power of empathy and love. So um, I would just want to educate her and let her know that that is that is not true. Um, I would also add too that I don't know this lady, I don't know her story, but I can understand as a psychologist and just from experiences working with people, I can understand why she might think that out of fear for her child, out of fear and nervousness because she doesn't want him to be vulnerable to attack, vulnerable to negative things. And from the best of her ability or her perspective, or who knows, I don't know her background or her life story, but in her mind perhaps it sounds like she thinks that's the way to help protect him, when in fact we know that developing children with a strong sense of empathy, it helps their strength. It helps them to interact with people. It strengthens their social connections. And we know that stronger social connections, we build those in our children. It contributes to higher self-esteem. It contributes to higher academic and work life experiences and performance. And also, we now know that lot of cultures may have known this already, but Western science is trying to catch up. And so some of the most recent research has shown that the number one biggest thing that fights against developing Alzheimer's later in life are social connections. And it's difficult to have social connections when you have no empathy, where you
Yes.
can sit with other people and create those connections. So um, that is a mistaken idea on multiple levels. But again, like I said, not knowing her, I could understand if she's maybe speaking out of fear and maybe out of what she had been taught as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's that part. So uh I think it's unfortunate, but I would respectfully disagree with her and say
And
that
thank you
that is
for
not true. And we're seeing.
yes.
It's interesting that you bring up that particular example too, because what we're seeing is the the person who occupies the White House. The reason I don't, I know people call him the president. Um, I find it curious, and since all of the investigation has not come in yet about how all these voting machines
Oh,
just
yes.
magically only in the states that matter most. I mean, they all matter, but
Mhm.
only in the swing states. Just, at the very last minute, they all just went to him
Mhm.
when
Mhm.
no evidence, leading up to that suggested that. I am hesitant to utilize that title. So I will just continue. I'll call him Donald Trump out of respect for that's his name. That's fine. And the occupier of the White House at this time.
That and
So
I fully concur with you
this is
always.
where, yes. But but I was going to say it's interesting that you use that woman as as an example, because we have Donald Trump, who, based on evidence and public facing information, struggles with the concept of empathy.
Yes.
We have that person juxtaposed to all the things that we've talked about so far, and many of the examples you talked about, where people with empathy are coming out and not only pushing back against these ICE agents and the mistreatment of people, the unnecessary violent treatment of people, all of those things, without due process and all the rest. We're seeing how their empathy is actually trumping
Yes.
the negative,
Mhm.
unwarranted, evil violence that is being perpetrated between people. I mean against people, including children.
Mhm.
So I think that's just stands as an example of exactly what we're talking about. How that lady, that mother, is mistaken. It is because of the empathy of the men and women, like you said, many of these women in these communities, that not only are ICE being pushed back, but there's several instances in which they were forced to either release people who were being kept, or warrants were they weren't even didn't even have warrants really, but they were being brought back because folks were forced to acknowledge that we really can't keep him or her. This
Right.
We really have nothing to base it on. So that speaks to the power, the great power of that empathy and love. Um, you know, Unlike what she is thinking, that mother.
Yes. Yes. But keeping with that theme, Dr. Angie. So the opposite of love is fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what we see in our country, where we hear the lines, oh, they're taking our country away. And I keep asking people, I said, who's taking your country away? Because let me tell you, when I've been plant shopping, I love to garden. It is my
Yeah.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
There is a particular it's a tree, but it's a flowering tree. It's a hibiscus. It's
Oh
tropical.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can't find them. They are difficult to find. And it was funny because I walked into a local retailer, into their garden section, and I've never experienced this before, where I walked into a garden section and all the plants looked like they were on life support.
Oh
Wil-
my.
Leaves were wilted down. And I said, this is because they kicked all the migrants and immigrants out of the country. So there's no one to pick any of these beautiful plants anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Fruits and vegetables. You can't find certain things in the grocery store. And
Mm-hmm.
now they're like, oh, farms are saying, oh, we're going to have to shut down. And I'm like, but you voted for this. What
Mm-hmm.
what did you think? Now there have been some people that have, you know, conspiracy theories. Black people were going to pick that up. I said we all work. Not. This is not slavery. This is not 1800. And if you
No,
think that that's coming back, let me let you know. Oh,
please.
it's not going to happen, and you're going to be in for it. Black people are not scared of you. Let me say that publicly here. Kimberly Baxter Davis said that we are not scared of you,
That's right. That's
but
right.
because it's fear, because you have masked men who will not show their faces,
Mm-hmm.
who have been rumored to be J6, January 6th insurrectionists, Some of them I understand are supposed to be deputized correction officers. I said, which makes sense to me because
Mhm.
some of them, their demeanor and behavior, I'm like, oh, this is somebody that works in corrections. You work around criminals all day in jail. And so your behavior becomes a reflection of that. And that's what we see when
Mhm.
someone's sitting in their car and you take a baton or a bully baton, whatever it's called, and break somebody's glass and drag
Mhm.
them out. You're
Mhm.
getting joy from that. And I've
Mhm.
seen some videos where they've bragged about how many people they picked up in a day.
Mhm.
Dr. Angie, what does this say about our country? Because on one hand, you have these two very striking different images. You have quote unquote the ICE forces or the deputized people
Mhm.
kidnapping and snatching people off the street who are supposed to be criminals, and
Mhm.
many are not. And then you have millions of people across the country protesting
Mhm.
peacefully, mind you. You know, Fox News is running saying that Los Angeles is burning. I've been watching videos. I don't see Los Angeles burning anywhere.
Because it's not.
It's not.
It
It's
was
not.
a square block.
Yes.
There was some graffiti and
Yes.
one car, and
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yes. And not.
yeah,
Um and I know they're instigators because there are people that are paid to do that. It's like
absolutely.
anything.
Mhm.
But what does that say about our country, Dr. Angie? Because on one side it seems like you have empathy, and on the other side you have fear.
I think what it says about our country is that we, as I've said many times, I'm not the only one. Um, when people say, "How do we get here?" and in terms of Donald Trump being there, in terms of the level of divisiveness, all of those things, and I've always said we never left here because we've never fully finished reckoning with our bloody racist past upon which this country has been built. So, as you and I have talked about, we never got an official federal apology. Um, you know, the it's just we could just go down the list. The more we learn about town, always the well-off, wealthy, or well-to-do towns, of course. Towns being burned, buried, flooded in response to the fact that Black people are minding their business and building wealth. Over and over again, we've seen this happen in the country. We had Reconstruction, and then that was just all taken away, and Jim Crow laws right on the backs of coming out
Right.
of slavery. Um, just the country has just really never finished. We were in many ways we were on our way, being
Mm-hmm.
pushed by largely by Black folks and allies to Black
Yeah.
folks for sure. But we didn't get that done. We didn't get that finished. So because of that, the psychological seduction of power
Mhm.
and an overwhelming insecure need to believe in the false hype that one group of people, meaning white folks or white men, are better in any way, shape, or form than anyone else, is something that has been tied to being able to get power and keep it in this country. And so, psychologically, people have been loath to let that go. I mean, obviously, as we always say, we don't mean every single person, but
Mhm.
enough people who are in positions of policy making, in positions of, being able to step over folks and utilize their privilege, that is it's weaved into our culture so deeply, without being fully reckoned with. It's been reckoned with in different ways, but not fully. So of course, you know, of course, here we are. Um, we've always had a country of people who are very empathetic, people who have risked their lives, even though they weren't white or didn't have what is it, a pony in the race, as people might say. We've always had enormous amounts of empathy in our country, in our wonderful service women and men throughout our country, I mean, throughout our history, who will lay down their lives, yes, in honor of their country, but also out of an empathetic love for others, juxtaposed to people who are and systems, not just
Mm.
individual systems that don't maintain themselves, they're maintained by humans, by
Right.
people, um,
Right.
juxtaposed with these systems and people who are the complete opposite. And they really derive a sick sense of satisfaction by continuing to feed this insecure fantasy that they are better than other people, that white folks are better than black and brown people, that men are better than women. And the feeding of that sadly looks like I'm going to put as many policies in place as I can to maintain this. I'm going to spend as much media as I can to maintain this. I'm going to give as many people deputized and permission, you know,
Right.
deputization and permission to go out and try to wreak havoc to maintain this fantasy. So we've always had these two aspects. And what heartens me is, you know, as I often say, um, like you were just saying that we're not going to be in, we're not going to go back. We're not going to go till the soil for you and all of that, you know, with
Not
no
at all.
pain. We're not going to do that. But the fact that that was so relatively recent in our history,
Yes.
um, I find heartening. It could be a scary thought as well, but I find it very heartening because it, the, you know, a lot of people don't realize that when you're reading the stories, when you're reading the textbooks, which we know don't always tell the whole story, of course, but when we're being taught our history and this information in this country, it comes across as though we were enslaved and there may have been one or two rebellions. There were constant rebellions, actually, in reality, of course.
Yes, there
But
were.
absolutely,
Lots
but they were
more
like
than what you actually know. Yes.
absolutely. But you know, the way it's told that we were enslaved, um what is it, the fittest, according to Darwin's theory, you know, the fittest of the ones, we just weren't fit.
Mm-hmm.
um and then after a few hundred years, you know, one or two rebellions, and you know, supposedly, and then we were freed.
Right.
We fought for that freedom.
Absolutely.
Weren't just, you know, magic wand from, uh, you know,
And
thankful for Abraham Lincoln and all, but he
right.
had some help to do that. So we
And
were,
even and I'm sorry.
no, no, great.
And even when Abraham President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, it still took us, many of us, another 2 years.
Exactly, which is why we celebrate Juneteenth.
Thank you.
Exactly. And to your point, it still took another, why did it take another 2 years? Because the point I'm getting at is it wasn't, unlike the way the story is often told, it wasn't just, oh, they were enslaved. There may have been a little pushback, you know, one or two rebellions, and then we were freed. No, folks tried everything they could in the South to hold, because this was a cash cow. Can you
Mhm.
imagine having this huge employment field in which you have to, I mean, literally and figuratively, all
Mhm.
these, all, you know, all these folks, you have to pay them anything. You just pocket. It's just
Yes.
greed, greed. So you're absolutely right. Folks did not want to turn that loose no matter what. And that refusal to turn that loose, despite the law, despite the fact that things were changing, contributed to why we never fully finished reckoning with this. What has been passed down, unfortunately, to a lot in a lot of generations of white families, again, not all,
Mhm.
is this idea, spoken or unspoken, body language, family
Mhm.
stories, as well as overtly stated. Somehow, folks have the impression that they are just entitled to black bodies,
Yes, they do.
entitled to black bodies, and black everything. So entitled to our intellect. So much of what we invented, so much of we've created, has been appropriated, misappropriated. You know, we were attempts to erase those black folks who created those things, and then, you know, slap some white names on it, pretend like that. You know, where did
Mhm.
it come from? In every industry. So a lot of this is, you know, it never stopped. It's gotten better because of pushback, because of being taught, uncovered, learned, etc. But I was saying the things that I find heartening is that in the face of all of that, we still remained free. We still created our own schools. We still created our own businesses. We still got laws changed. We still don't have to sit on the back of the bus. It took blood, literal blood,
Yeah.
sweat, and tears to break the back of Jim Crow, but it was done. Um, and so like I like to say, it's the same God and the same resilient people. And by people, I mean everyone, because it took everyone. It took a lot of white allies in
Mm-hmm.
the clergy, in the classroom, on Capitol Hill, and so I am heartened by seeing, again, circling back to what we started with, when I see all of those people out, a lot of those people that you named, not named, but yet you pointed to in your example of seeing these women push back. A lot of these women were not Latin or Hispanic women. They were white folks or other, people of other backgrounds who were pushing back against and putting them, really, if we're honest, because ICE is just illegally arresting everybody, putting
Exactly.
themselves on the line,
Mm-hmm.
risking themselves to try to protect their non-white neighbors and friends and people that they considered family. And in some cases, they were family. So seeing all of that, that's another through line that has also been a part of our history, which is why we're all still here.
Yes.
We've always had people from all backgrounds that don't just lie down and accept it. We've always had people who fought against slavery while it was going on. We've always had. So those things hearten me, not just because of the fight back, the pushback, but because we've seen some effectiveness of that. Even in this short, slightly 100 plus days of this current administration, so many things that he tried or they tried it. Not all, but we know there's several things that were rolled back or recalled or pushed back, or they quietly, oops, just tippy toed away from that and took it down from, you know, uh, who is that there? They tried to, as an example, tried to take down, attacking so many Black amazing heroes and sheroes
Mm-hmm.
from in the military,
Yes.
taking those things down from the official White House pages, where a few of those are just kind of like quietly put back up because there was such a backlash,
Mm-hmm.
such a
Mm-hmm.
backlash. So I'm enjoying seeing the positive impact of people not only just realizing that they have a voice, but seeing for themselves and seeing for ourselves. It's good for me to see as well that there is effect. It has been effective. There's more stuff that he continues to try. Sadly, people have been affected in painful ways, but uh, as we continue to grow, I mean, as this continues to go, I'm seeing that human psychological desire for empathy growing. As you know, this was not the first national protest that we've seen. It's bigger than ever with millions and millions. And so this pushback, this refusal to give in, and this linking of arms with each other, that is continuing to grow is very heartening. I'm loving seeing that. So what I'm seeing is that people realizing that using their voices is something that is a powerful tool, and I see people continuing to work to do that.
And that is a perfect way to end our podcast, Dr. Angie. Thank you for that inspirational and wonderful breakdown on what we're seeing and psychologically why people may be motivated to that. Hopefully, people will continue to use their voices and speak up for others, for themselves, because, that's the only way that you really can impact change
Absolutely.
the right way.
Yes. And vote. Just
Yes.
keep voting. A lot of, I last want to just add,
Hmm.
we have to say that a lot of, um, uh, a big chunk of why we are where we are is the psychological warfare and the work, the deliberate work to convince people that, their vote is not going to count or not going to matter. So if there was any tampering, in case there was any tampering, which I seen, as we've talked about before, which there's on record video, multiple of Trump bragging about
Hmm.
rigging things.
Hmm.
So the psychological warfare, that's an important playing field that we have to address as well. And we are addressing it. The psychological understanding that my voice, it does have power. That coming together with people I may not normally agree with does have power for change. The the painful disappointment when so many more people did come out to vote in those record numbers when Vice President Harris was running, and then to find the letdown that this, that this happened, um, has been used as a tool to try to convince people that their vote doesn't count. But
Right.
we have to keep saying, like you said, continue to fight in all the positive, good, strong, empathetic ways. And that includes do not stop voting because that's what they want you to do as well.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Dr. Angie, for being here. Before we get out of here, please tell us how we can reach you and get information from you. Tell us how we can follow you on social media, and then tell us about all the things that you have coming up next.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be here. I can be found on the socials, not all the socials, but LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube and Instagram. All of those are my name, Angela Celeste May, or Dr. Angela Celeste May. My book, which is Freedom: What is the Experience of Living Without Negative Self-Imposed Limitations? You can find that on barnesandnoble.com and xlibris.com. Um, it's a wonderful book, if I do say so, and it is about what we're talking about: resilience. People talking about from lots of different backgrounds. I did wonderful research that was a privilege to do for my master's thesis, um, and I wanted to do a study on resilience. So I talked to men and women from lots of different backgrounds and broad ranges of ages, and out of that study came 7 key themes that help people get from that they found that were in common among all these people. Well, it wasn't a huge swath, but the group of people, um, where they were able to get unstuck to being free, and that's why it's called freedom. And so people have found who have read the book have talked about how those 7 themes were very helpful for them. So I feel that they are very largely universal in many ways. So do pick up your copy. Let's see. Oh, also Reverb Nation as well / Angela Celeste May and Dr. Angela Celeste May on Facebook for more music stuff. Also, what else? I'm doing lots of things. I'm running my production company, Celeste Productions, and I teach private voice and piano from that here in Detroit. You can contact me by calling Mary Grove Conservancy in Detroit if you are interested in voice or piano lessons. Um, what else? The music, the show that we've been taking on the road, that I'm starring in, which sounds funny to say that, but I'm starring in it. But everyone involved is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Musicians and singers, wonderful. My brother's drumming. Um, it's called Love, War, and Jazz, based on the new novel by Heather Buchanan called Victors. And it tells the wonderful story in concert style of the true, it's historical fiction. So based on the true stories of Black men who were involved in World War One and were key to helping win the war for the world, but also they were musicians. So they helped to spread the new music at the time of jazz to Europe and those throughout the world. So that those performances have been going very well. We had a very successful one at Marygrove Conservancy here in Detroit earlier this month, and we're going to take a summer break from that, and there are plans to take it back out on the road. We had already been to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and New York. Wonderful. So we're talking about other dates and other cities around the country in the fall and next year. So that's exciting as well. You can also find me and my sister, Michelle May, who co-owns A.M. May and Associates Incorporated with me. We do counseling, consulting, and coaching. You can find us on our website, amaassociates.com. We are also on Instagram and Facebook as well. Let's see. I have to stop saying as I say again. If you go to the website or the Facebook page, you will see, or my sister's Facebook page as well, Michelle Ann May.
Mm-hmm.
She has both a virtual and an in-person retreat for creative professionals coming up. So do check that out. As for myself, I am doing lots of things. I'm also faculty Wayne County Community College District in the psychology department. So I'll be teaching in the fall, a course. And in terms of my coaching, I do doctoral coaching for people who are either interested in working on a doctorate degree or who are in their program. Um, there's a lot of components that people aren't taught. They have to do with the emotional aspects of pursuing doctorates, um,
Right.
dealing with family dynamics and all of that life stuff that's very important, as well as the doctorate itself,
Mm-hmm.
the dissertation. So I do that coaching regardless of your background. I've coached people in business, all kinds of things. But I'm also adding something I've done for a lot of years, but I'm now adding it to what I do through the company, and that is executive coaching. I
Yeah.
have been a successful executive coach for people in architectural engineering, people in all kinds of different business. So I'm taking that on as a new component for what I do under AMA. So I'm very excited about that. If you are interested in executive coaching, which is predominantly it's one-on-one. This is not I've done lots of staff coaching, in companies, which is wonderful as well. But executive coaching is specifically working one on one with the CEO and
Mm-hmm.
perhaps the CEO and the director, like the leader or a couple top leaders. You can always reach out to me at Dr. Angela at gmail.com. And that is my email under AMA and Associates. So yes, there's all of that. I'm going to be mistress of ceremonies tomorrow
Mm.
for the Black Caucus Foundation of Michigan. They have a course for young people in learning about an anti-violence lifestyle and all that goes with anti-violence. So they're having a wonderful dinner tomorrow for the graduates of that program, and I was asked to be mistress of ceremony, so I am honored to do that, and other stuff coming up. Other stuff coming up. I'm also going to be involved in I will be speaking to men at a in July, dealing with men's mental health and self care. So I've got public speaking going on and singing going on and teaching going on, and so it is a blessing. And I'll be doing more with the book as well, and doing some more writing coming up. So
Excellent. Congratulations on the Mistress of Ceremonies. That's amazing.
oh, thank yes, that's one of the things that I do. I've done over the years. So it's always a blessing to share in that way as well.
Yes, it is. And so we are so happy and thrilled that you are with us. We will look forward to seeing you next month on another great topic, on another great episode. And so thank you again, Dr. Angie.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, guys, I'm Kimberly Batchelor Davis. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Red Note, Spill, Fanbase, Threads, Blue Sky. I think that's it. To see this show, you can go to youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. If you'd like to listen to this show, you can go to Apple, Audible, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. And to learn more about me as an author, visit kimbdavis.com. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you'll join us on our next episode. And always remember, be magnificent.